Ladies and gentlemen, you know what drains more energy than anything? Letting every little thing get to you. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, a coworker throws shade, your plans change last minute, and suddenly your whole mood is hijacked. But here's the truth. Being unbothered isn't about ignoring life. It's about mastering your mindset, so nothing controls you without your permission. Today, I'm giving you 5 mental habits that keep you calm, clear, and in control. No matter what's going on, respond, don't react. Control the pause before you speak or act. That pause is your power. Most people give it away without even realizing it. They hear something they don't like. They feel a sting of offense and boom, they're firing off a text, snapping back, or letting their body language do the talking for them. But the problem with reacting instantly is you're not thinking. You're just letting your emotions drive. And emotions are like weather. They can change in a matter of minutes. When you take a pause, even just a couple of seconds, you're shifting from impulse to intention. You're telling yourself, I'm in charge here, not my mood, not my irritation, not this person in front of me. That pause is where you get to ask yourself questions that change the whole situation. Is this worth my energy? Is what I'm about to say going to help? Or am I about to make this worse just to prove a point? And here's the thing, you don't need an hour to figure that out. You just need the discipline to hold your tongue for a beat and let your brain catch up to your emotion. That split second is the difference between adding fuel to a fire and letting the flame burn out on its own. Sometimes that pause means literally doing nothing. No facial reaction, no words, no sighs or rolling eyes, just stillness. Because silence has power too. It forces you to think instead of just explode. It also forces the other person to sit with their own words instead of pulling you into a ping-pong match of arguments. People are often shocked when you don't take their bait, and that's where your strength grows. You're teaching them that you won't be pushed into a corner emotionally. Other times that pause can be active. Maybe you take a slow breath. Maybe you repeat a calming phrase in your head, like this isn't about me. Or, I get to choose my tone. Maybe you remind yourself of the bigger picture before you say anything. You're creating just enough space between the trigger and your choice so that you don't hand over the steering wheel of your day to someone else's behavior. It's also worth remembering that when you react instantly, you're showing your cards. You're letting the other person see exactly where your buttons are and how to push them. But when you respond, when you take that pause and choose your words carefully, you're keeping your emotional deck hidden. You're not pretending you don't care. You're proving you're in control of how you show you care. That's a huge difference. People respect someone who can keep their cool under pressure, even if they don't agree with them. Building this habit doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to suddenly turn into the most patient person in the room just because you heard this once. It takes practice. It takes catching yourself mid-reaction and saying, nope, let me start over. And that's okay. Every time you manage to hold back a knee-jerk response, you're training yourself to be calmer the next time. Eventually that pause becomes natural. It becomes your default setting. When you master the pause, you stop being controlled by the urgency of the moment. You stop letting other people's chaos dictate your tone, your decisions, or your peace. You start to realize that not every comment needs a comeback, and not every provocation deserves your participation. That's how you stay unbothered, not by shutting out the world, but by refusing to let the world rush you into being someone you don't want to be. See the big picture. Stop giving small moments big power. Most of the things that throw us off in the moment feel massive when they happen. But if you zoom out, you'll see they're just tiny dots on a much bigger map. The problem is when you live only in that exact second of frustration, embarrassment, or irritation, you blow it up to the size of your whole world. Someone cuts you in line, a coworker makes a snide comment. Your phone dies right before an important call. Your mind treats it like a crisis. But if you were to look at your life from a bird's eye view, you'd see how small this moment really is compared to everything else you've been through, and everything still ahead of you. It's like when you look back on an old problem you used to think was the end of the world, and now you barely remember it. That's the big picture in action. The same thing will happen with most of today's irritations. They will shrink with time. But you don't have to wait for months or years to let them shrink. You can decide right now to mentally zoom out. Ask yourself, will this matter next week, next month, 5 years from now? If the answer is no, then it doesn't deserve front row seats. in your head. This isn't about pretending nothing matters. It's about assigning the right level of importance to each thing. When you train yourself to see the big picture, you stop letting one bad moment define your whole day. Think about it. A single rude text in the morning can have people snapping at their family, sulking at work, and losing focus for hours. That's giving a tiny spark the power to burn down your peace. The big picture mindset says, this is just 1 minute out of thousands I'll live today, so I'm not handing it the whole day's worth of energy. That choice takes away the drama and keeps you grounded. Sometimes seeing the big picture means reminding yourself of everything else that's going right. Maybe traffic is slow, but you've got a car to drive. Maybe your boss criticized your work, but you've still got a paycheck coming in. It's not about toxic positivity, it's about balance. We tend to zoom in on what's wrong so tightly that we blur out everything that's still good. Big picture thinking widens the frame so you can see both sides. And when you see both, you stop feeling like the world is against you. This habit also protects you from emotional overreaction. When you're stuck in the small view, every inconvenience feels personal. But from the big picture, you realize most of it isn't about you at all. That cashier's short tone might be because they've been on their feet for 8 hours, not because you did something wrong. That friend who canceled plans might be juggling things you don't know about. The big picture lets you give grace not just to others, but to yourself. It's not always easy to zoom out when you're in the middle of something frustrating. That's why it helps to have a mental trigger. Maybe it's a phrase you repeat, like widen the lens, or this is just one page, not the whole book. Maybe it's picturing yourself from 10 years in the future, looking back at this exact day. You'd probably laugh at how big it felt in the moment. The more you practice this, the faster you'll catch yourself before you spiral. Seeing the big picture is like having emotional insurance. It keeps you from cashing out all your calm over something small. You'll still feel things, but they won't run the show. You'll stop letting single moments weigh more than they should. And that's how you keep your mind steady, even when the moment feels messy. Protect your mental space. Choose what you allow to stick. Your mind is like a room, and not everyone or everything deserves an invitation inside. But most people leave the door wide open, letting in every comment, every opinion, every bit of negativity they come across. And once it's in, it lingers, replaying in your head, influencing your mood, and distracting you from what actually matters. Protecting your mental space means you start treating your thoughts like prime real estate. If it doesn't pay rent in peace, confidence, or clarity, it doesn't get to stay. That doesn't mean you never listen to criticism or avoid challenges. It means you get to decide which voices deserve your attention and which ones are just noise. Every day you're hit with dozens of little moments that could mess with your mood if you let them. A sarcastic message from a friend, a social media post that makes you compare your life to someone else's, a stranger's bad attitude in the grocery store. If you let each of these moments stick to you, you're carrying the emotional weight of other people's baggage. Protecting your mental space means learning to brush off what doesn't belong to you. You can acknowledge something happened without letting it live in your head, rent-free for hours or days. One way to do this is to filter everything through the question, does this matter to me personally, or am I borrowing someone else's problem? If it's not your problem, you can choose to release it immediately. That's not cold, that's boundary. You can feel empathy for someone without letting their storm cloud follow you home. And here's the truth. Most of what sticks in our head isn't even about us. That rude tone from your coworker might be about the stress they're under, not your performance. That online comment might be more about the commenter's insecurities than your worth. When you remember that, you stop carrying what was never yours to begin with. Protecting your mental space also means limiting your exposure to things that drain you. That might mean muting certain social media accounts, stepping away from the news when it's too heavy, or saying no to conversations that always end in negativity. You're not shutting out reality, you're choosing how much of it you let take root in your mind. Think about it. If you keep planting seeds of stress, comparison, and anger in your head, you're going to grow a garden full of weeds. But if you plant thoughts that build you up, you create a place that feels safe and strong inside yourself. Another part of this habit is not over-explaining your boundaries. You don't need to justify why you're not engaging in certain topics, why you left a group chat, or why you didn't respond to a message right away. Your mental health doesn't need permission slips from other people. When you stop over-explaining, you send a clear message. You are the guard at the gate of your mind, and entry is by your terms, not theirs. That's when people start realizing you can't be pulled into every little drama. Of course, there will always be things that sneak in and stick for a while. A hurtful comment, a disappointment, a regret. Protecting your mental space doesn't mean you never feel those things. It means you don't let them unpack and settle down inside you. You notice them, you process them, and then you make the choice to let them leave. The more you practice this, the lighter you feel, because you're no longer carrying the unnecessary weight of every single negative thing that crosses your path. When you start protecting your mental space, you create a kind of calm that other people know. You're less reactive, less drained, and more present in your own life. You stop wasting energy on battles that aren't yours to fight. And little by little you realize you've built a mental environment where peace is the default setting, not the rare visitor. Reframe the story. Turn setbacks into neutral or even positive meaning. The way you interpret an event determines how it affects you far more than the event itself. Two people can go through the exact same thing and walk away with completely different emotions because of the story they tell themselves about it. If you tell yourself a story that paints you as powerless or unlucky, that's how you'll feel. But if you choose a story that gives you perspective, growth, or even humor, you take back control of the impact it has on you. Reframing doesn't mean lying to yourself. It means looking at the situation from a different angle until you find one that serves you instead of drains you. When something goes wrong, most people lock into the worst possible version of the story. They add meaning that makes the moment heavier. This always happens to me. People don't respect me. I'll never get this right. That's giving the problem more power than it deserves. Reframing is catching yourself in that moment and asking, is there another way to see this? Maybe that meeting running late isn't an attack on your time. Maybe it's a chance to catch up on your emails. Maybe missing that event isn't proof you're unreliable. Maybe it's proof you're human and can't be everywhere at once. You're not denying the inconvenience. You're just refusing to make it your entire identity. The power of reframing is that it moves you from being the victim of the moment to being the narrator of it. As the narrator, you get to decide which details to emphasize. You can highlight the lesson you learned, the small win that came out of it, or the fact that it won't matter in a week. The same story can go from "I failed" to "I'm learning faster than ever," simply because you chose different words, and your brain listens to the words you feed it. If you tell it a story of strength, it will start acting from strength. If you tell it a story of weakness, it will stay there. One of the best ways to practice reframing is to imagine explaining the situation to someone else who doesn't know you. Would you tell them the doom and gloom version, or could you explain it in a way that shows you're still in control? This works especially well for things you can't change. Traffic jams, rude people, unexpected expenses. You can either frame them as personal attacks or as neutral facts of life. The more you choose neutral or even slightly positive, the less those moments stick to you. Sometimes reframing can even turn a setback into an advantage. Maybe that rejection frees you up for an opportunity you wouldn't have considered otherwise. Maybe that person walking away is clearing space for someone better to walk in. It's not about pretending you're happy about it right away. It's about leaving the door open for the possibility that this could be working in your favor. Life looks very different when you believe it's happening for you instead of to you. It's also important to remember that reframing is a skill you build. You won't automatically see the bright side of everything, and you don't have to. You just need to get faster at catching the negative frame before it locks in. That means paying attention to your self-talk, especially in those first few minutes after something goes wrong. If you notice it spiraling, you can stop, take a breath, and choose a different frame. Over time, this becomes your default way of thinking. When you master reframing, you realize you have more influence over your peace than you thought. You stop giving raw events the power to define your mood, your day, or your worth. And instead of getting stuck in a single narrative, you train your mind to find one that keeps you steady, clear, and able to move forward. Anchor in self-trust. Know you can handle whatever comes. When you trust yourself, outside chaos doesn't shake you the same way, because you know you have the tools to navigate it. Most of the stress we feel in unpredictable situations comes from doubting our own ability to handle them. We start playing worst-case scenarios in our heads, and each one feels bigger because we imagine ourselves powerless in the face of it.
But self-trust flips that. It says no matter what happens, I'll figure it out. That belief doesn't erase challenges, but it takes away the fear that you'll crumble when they show up. It's like walking into a storm with the quiet confidence that you've survived storms before. Building self-trust starts with keeping your own word. Every time you follow through on something you said you'd do, even if it's small, you're proving to yourself that you can be counted on. That proof stacks up over time until it becomes your default belief. The opposite is also true. If you constantly break promises to yourself, your brain learns not to rely on you, and that shows up as insecurity in other areas of life. So you start with small commitments you know you can keep. Then you grow from there. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. When you anchor in self-trust, you stop outsourcing your stability to other people. You don't need everyone to approve of you before you act, and you don't crumble if someone doubts you. You've already decided that your own judgment carries weight. That doesn't mean you stop listening to advice. It means you weigh it against your own experience, instead of automatically assuming someone else knows better. This kind of confidence is quiet, not loud. It doesn't need to announce itself, because it's not built for show. It's built for substance. Self-trust also changes the way you handle mistakes. Instead of letting them confirm your fears, you see them as part of the process. You can admit when you're wrong without spiraling into shame, because you know being wrong doesn't erase your ability to get it right next time. You can recover faster from setbacks, because you trust your own resilience. And that resilience grows every time you face something uncomfortable and get through it, even if it wasn't pretty. One powerful way to strengthen self-trust is to look back at your track record. Think of all the times you faced something you didn't think you could handle, and yet here you are. You figured out a way, you adapted, you kept going. That's evidence, and your brain responds to evidence. The more you remind yourself of those wins, the more solid your belief becomes that you'll find a way again. Self-trust isn't built on wishful thinking, it's built on a history of showing up for yourself. It also helps to separate self-trust from self-esteem. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. Self-trust is how much you believe in your ability to act. You might not feel amazing every day, but you can still trust yourself to make decisions, to respond, to adapt. That's why self-trust is such a strong anchor. It's not about feeling good all the time. It's about knowing you can move forward even when you don't. When you have that anchor, situations that used to shake you lose their power. You stop fearing the unknown because you know you'll meet it with the same resourcefulness you've used before. You stop clinging to control over every detail because you trust yourself to handle whatever details you're given. And that's when you realize the real freedom isn't in controlling life. It's in knowing you can stand steady, no matter how it unfolds.